beyond the game goes out in a blaze of glory as the first team eliminated from the Gold Club World Championship. First, but not the last, not even tonight, as we have one more series tonight, and it will be another elimination match between Roll20 and the Super Perfect Team. I'm Gillyweed here with Grubby, and Grubby, this is going to be a doozy of a series.
Yeah, they were the opening match of the Gold Club World Championship 2017 in the group stage. In that match, Roll20 took a 2-0 victory over SPT, solidifying them as the deserved best team in North America right now. They had many amazing matches afterwards, but still ended up with only 4 points in the group stage.
Yes, the pride of North American heroes of the Storm esports now with their final lifeline in the lower bracket, the only North American team here at the Gold Club World Championship. The pressure is certainly on for these 5 players. They have had a lot of great games, but also a lot of losses, having difficulty in the late stages of the games. There's no more room for error for Roll20 esports now if they want to continue on, continue learning and getting all sorts of takeaways to take back to the North American region at large.
Yeah, Roll20 has had a day to think about everything that had happened. They took many of the top teams here at the Gold Club World Championship to the brink, pushing back against some of the very best in the world, the best European and Korean teams. But then they ended up losing in the late game. And now let's see what they can bring.
And let's see what China's #1 in HGC can bring to this series. Super Perfect Team has also not had a perfect run through the group stage of the Gold Club World Championship, seemingly only able to defeat Chinese teams only until the strange powder keg experience almost from them, right? Where we just didn't think it was possible for them to beat a team with the caliber like Fnatic, and yet the second game, something lit, a spark was born for this team.
Yeah, in order for SPT to get rank 5 in the group stage and to meet what we thought was going to be an easy BTG, completely disproven in the last series, BTG played amazingly, they needed to win all their games against the European teams. As soon as that chance was off the table, SPT, as it were, lost pressure and allowed themselves to just enjoy themselves in the moment, play the game, and they defeated Fnatic soundly in that second map. That is their final experience of the group stage, and that is the fire that they're carrying into this particular here match. And if that mindset can be maintained, Roll20 better beware.
They should, but Grubby, the pressure is absolutely back on now for Super Perfect Team. This is the Chinese tournament. They have all of the pride going in to that now, and they don't want to lose to Roll20. They don't want to be 2 teams from China eliminated the very first day of elimination.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of power behind both of these teams. Roll20, they played some of the best games we've seen from North America in maybe the last 1.5 years of Heroes of the Storm esports, but they lacked a little something, a little spice in that late game. Be it whether they couldn't exactly agree on some of the calls or weren't exactly sure how to finish it, they did so well in the early to mid game that they got to late game situations that were probably relatively new to them, being ahead against a team like Fnatic, KSV, Ballistics.
Right, and that is not an isolated problem, right, for a North American team. This has been a problem that many North American teams have run into. I'm thinking back to last GCWC and Astral Authority, who were miles ahead of Ballistics on Sky Temple and still lost that game. But it's what is new, it seems, for Roll20 here is that not only does that happen to them when they are ahead, when they're in the driver's seat versus a team like Fnatic, but even when they start to make great comebacks in a game, like versus Team Dignitas on Infernal Shrines, or especially versus KSV, when they're able to contest the core but ended up losing there. But those incidences, those scenarios for a new team, for shot callers together, are quite rare, and so every time is a learning experience. It's just whether or not they've learned enough to be able to start getting victories to keep themselves in this tournament.
Exactly, Gilly. It's not the fact that it happened, but how they dealt with it in the last, I don't know, 48 hours or so, and a little bit before that. How did they manage to convert those experiences into something productive, into something useful that can then be leveraged into future games? Because every game is going to be uniquely different, and so you'll never be in exactly the same situation as you were before. So you need to come up with a method and a plan in order to make calls matter. And to have them be the right calls, ideally, and also to do them with the whole team. That, in the end, will decide whether Roll20 will have a relatively easy game today against SPT, or will struggle all throughout it.
So what we're looking at is now the spark situation of SPT, asking if that spark has gone out versus what's felt like a diminishing flame for Roll20 in every sense. They had these good series, but the last two versus Ballistics, who has shown that they might be the top team at this event, we're yet to see for sure. And then versus their final series that they had, which was versus CE, right? Where they lost both of those. Can they keep the motivation alive, the mentality alive? This is a group of 3 players from one team and 2 players from another coming together. Can they hold now when that is such a downward spiraling trend?
And that remains to be seen. And whatever mentality each of these teams have going into this match, it evolves over the course of a game. We saw this in the previous series just now between BTG versus CE.
Right.
I would blame them a little bit. I would not be surprised if CE came into the match against BTG and said, what do we show? What shall we hide? How easy do we want to win today? And it's going to be free win. I mean, any commentator here would have predicted a 3-0, but that didn't happen. So they evolved. They realized reality hit them in that post-4th game, and they said, okay, we're going to bring it in game 5. For BTG, I think it was the opposite.
Yeah.
When they had nothing left to win and they were to the brink and they had lost 16 maps in a row, not winning a single one yet, suddenly they said, we're out, it's over, it's done, let's just have fun. They win 2 games. Suddenly they find themselves in the 2-2 and it's like, now the pressure is back.
Right.
Because now it's like, oh, we win 1 more map.
We have a chance.
Yeah, we double our prize money, we go top 6, we win this match, and then I think that probably, again, we haven't asked the players, but probably I think that's when that match stress returns. So the proper evolution over the course of a best of 5 for either of these teams is going to be very important.
Well, we are about to get into the draft for game 1 of this best of 5 elimination match, but there's something I wanted to talk with you about as we're getting ready for the drafting phase, and that's the idea of double support, because this is a very unique tournament situation, right, that we have, where we have a lot of data from the group stage, and then we also have this switchover of patch, and a lot of people are wondering, where is the double support now?
Right.
And so I started taking the data down and doing the numbers, the math of the group stage, and the double warrior, double support, that was the most common composition that was played. But then that started to kind of peter out as teams were practicing on the new patch, and then switching more over into the double warrior single support, which ended up with a slightly better win rate. So I thought, okay, that's probably where we're going to be heading. And that was the case yesterday, but we're still waiting on the numbers. But it's cool to see that, people are still wondering, where is the double support truly going to lie? And we're better than to learn from the pros themselves.
Yeah, and we saw those play yesterday, those 4 winner bracket teams,
yes.
Fnatic, Ballistics, Dignitas, KSV, and we have seen a good number of single support, and we've seen it do pretty well as well. In the series, I believe, with Dignitas Ballistics, it was solo support was way more effective. I think double support, we saw it a little bit, and it didn't do too well. So maybe this is where Blizzard wanted it to be. We've just had a major major patch to the supports, and they said, we want double support to be around, but not necessary. And it looks like, also from CE's results, so far that is true.
Yeah, CE a lot more of the solo support from that. And it's going to be fun to see where that continues to evolve. I definitely will be checking back in with the numbers after seeing the other 4 teams play today, because we have to remember that Ballistics does just prefer single support anyway, and because KSV is still playing double support, it ended up with a higher win rate overall yesterday. But
stop skewing the stats with your pro plays, KSV.
Yeah, what the heck with the Ana plays and everything, but it's obviously a lot less data than what we have from the group stage. But here we go, Roll20 versus SPT, 2 teams that kind of have their own meta that it's been difficult for them to show off at time, but it does feel like it's because of the decisions made in-game more so than decisions made out of game. But both teams liking a lot of ETC, even playing some Ragnaros. These are the 2 teams that have played the most Ragnaros, although there have been a couple of other teams dabbling, and it's still rare even for these teams.
And when you look at the map choices as well, there's an interesting trend between the 2. They've all played 14 maps in the group stage. And so generally, since they both have 4 points, they have had the ability to choose whether they would like to pick a map or to take first pick, first ban. They've had the equal amount of times to make this decision, roughly. Roll20 has only picked a map 4 times, by my reckoning, whereas SPT has done so 7 times. So it seems like SPT values, at least in the best of 2 format, where to play more than the draft order, whereas Roll20 seems to be more flexible.
The game is afoot as Dragonshire is allowed through. Roll20 banned Dragonshire versus SPT last time, but are switching it up. They did have to play versus SPT on Braxis, and they did win that, but that was the closer of the 2 games between these 2 teams. So now Braxis receives the ban, Tomb is the ban from SPT, and Dragonshire is chosen for game 1. SPT picking Dragonshire, that should be no surprise to Roll20.
Yeah, Roll20 so far 0-1 record on Dragonshire. Haven't played it all too much from the looks of it, presumably due to their number of bans on it as well. Now in terms of the ban slots, Roll20 has been very diverse. It's been hard to predict them. Tassadar ban, yes, ETC, Genji, generally they look at this in the first slot, but it looks like they really adapt their bans almost more than any other team to the team that they are playing against.
Well, they start with the standard Tassadar ban here. We'll see how that changes up from game to game. SPT now has to consider ETC as a possibility here, but there are a lot of things to consider in this this map, Dragonshire. So if not ETC, they can likely theorize that Roll20 would be so far as to pick that up. I don't know if they'd first pick it, but both of these teams have such high emphasis on him. I would bet that if he got through, neither team would mind first picking it.
Right. Yeah, you know, all the top picks, the usual suspects are, of course, you know, something that all the teams are looking at. Greymane, Dahaka, ETC, Tassadar. No one is really going to be playing without these heroes. Lucio. To name them specialties of either team would be going too far, because everyone looks at them. Really, when we look at specialties, it's teams that look at heroes more than other teams. And like you said, Ragnaros is a big one for both of these. Other heroes that Roll20 is comfortable with as heroes that other teams don't pick up too much is, for example, Garrosh, Malfurion, Junkrat, and then also that occasional diva from Roll20.
Well, let's talk about what has been conspicuously absent in drafts for these teams, because I look at Roll20 as a team that has picked up 2 phenomenal North American Genji players and yet have not drafted Genji a single time. Generally, that has been one of their most banned heroes, is Genji. And then SPT, only 1 Greymane, played by their generally melee assassin, not having either Melody C or Xin Xiao play Greymane. I even wondered way back at BlizzCon if that was going to be a problem for SPT, because Xin Xiao had not played Greymane. Way more favor into Vala, and Greymane was becoming more and more popular at BlizzCon. They did end up drafting it, and he did play it there, but completely gone once again. Maybe
it's like that thing that my parents used to say: if both me and my brother wants to play with a particular toy, then they say, no one gets to play with it then. You both have to learn to share. Everyone wants Greymane, no one plays it on SPT? Probably not. So Roll20 can look at some solo laners that they look at. Dahaka is gone. Ragnaros not the perfect map here. They are going to be coming out with that Genji. And Tyrael. They've been doing some homework, making some changes.
Tyrael Genji sets up for a possible double reset comp. Very excited to see who ends up on each of those assassins, Greymane and Genji. Now,
SPT's bans have been heavily diverse as well. Tassadar, Genji, a lot of tank bans in that second slot. For example, Sonya gets looked at a lot as a ban, Anubarak. In this particular case, there is no dedicated top laner for Roll20 yet, though we have learned from Tyrael compositions on Dragonshire that it's not really a 1-4 split per se anymore. It can be quite different. KSV Ballistics put on a clinic actually with a triple top on this map.
Yeah, and with Genji, Roll20 are already setting up to have those kinds of fluid rotations for possible ganks on the Dahaka, who would be more of the stable top laner for SPT. But SPT can do the same with that Dahaka as the global, trying to stock down when they perceive to have an advantage there and find someone for a quick dragon kill. SPT takes out Karzim as another diving hero to go with the rest of this clearly dive-centered composition for Roll20.
Yeah, We can see the mobility meta here in a very strong manner. Kharazim, Lucio and Tyrael are three of the main heroes that give movement speed to allies. And so it is the battle of the mobility here on Dragonshire between Lucio and Tyrael.
This is also good for SPT in that both Roll20 and SPT have highly prioritized Rhaegar. In fact, for ZZH and for Buds, as far back as I can remember, really liking to play Rhaegar. And Rhaegar has been hit pretty hard, only in half of the games yesterday, as opposed to just about every single one. And so
it's fitting because he has half the lightning shield that he had before.
Oh yes, it's perfect! Exactly as it should be mathematically and as we would expect. So having Lucio there, who has only risen in power, it seems, for teams, and then taking out Kharazim, who was seeming to be more of a favorite for Buds before, is just a double win there for SPT. It makes Buds have to dip further into the hero pool, although there's still Uther as maybe a way of being able to enable the Greymane and Genji.
Sick double pickup here by SPT, very anti-auto attack focused. Both Cassia and Arthas do a great job against Greymane. Cassia not particularly as effective against Genji per se. Genji has a lot of spell damage and her armor is specifically against auto attacks. And Lucio is pretty good against Genji. SPT still can flex in that final slot whether they want double support or not. Roll20. They need a healer and presumably a solo laner.
I would expect SPT to get another support looking at what they have now with the Cassia as a sort of hyper carry, and to try to help with the early game heals from Lucio.
It looks like Roll20 would like to have a solo laner that's of the warrior archetype instead of assassin to be a little bit more survivable. Sonya comes to mind. Sonya is really good against Cassia as well. Poison Spear takes off a big chunk of her HP. And Sonya is mostly spell damage. Maybe Sonya and a support. Sonya Rhaegar.
Rhaegar, yes.
I'd be very surprised if it was Rag.
Mura.
Wow.
Tyrael top lane.
So Tyrael doesn't wave clear that well, but he empowers his own wave with shield. He's fairly mana expensive, which means he's not great into Dahaka, who has all kinds of sustain. What Tyrael does have is the teleportation over the wall with the Eldruins, so he can have more temple control than you might expect, more shrine control.
Final pick now for SPT. Is it another support? There's still Auriel up as a hero who can enable Cassia, but Cassia can also enable her with the Hope, because she does get blinds as an option for talent at 13.
Auriel's great, actually. Either that or... No, I'm not going to say Lily. It's taboo.
It would be the first Lily of the tournament, though.
Yeah.
She did get increased healing from Jug of 1,000 Cups.
And everyone else got nerfed, so by comparison, she's like 15% better than before. Probably still not enough. Auriel probably the main choice. I would like that quite a bit.
Full stun.
Okay, so more global power. Pretty good damage. Means Lucio solo support. He can do pretty fine against Gilnean Cocktail Poke. Sound barrier against Genji. There's only 2 assassins, so he just needs to make sure that no one gets all in. We actually...
And if that happens, you have a Gust.
Yeah, right. So Falstad is like the ranged assassin with some of the most peel, together with Chromie probably. Very interesting actually that there is no cleanse on the side of SPT. This gives a small chance that Roll20 might want to pick up Judgment on Tyrael.
Ooh.
Imagine that. Big Dwarf Toss range together with Judgment on Lucio. Hit the Stormbolt, Gilnean Cocktail, Cursed Bullet, even go for the throat would probably even be easier. Easy kill on Lucio, with only Gust really being the counter argument to it.
Yeah, sometimes against a solo support Lucio, you will see that Judgment be taken instead because of the exact situation you're talking about. And they do have the follow-up crowd control from Muradin. But even with that, I would worry about Genji and Greymane not being able to have Sanctification and both relying on Rhaegar. You only have one Ancestral Heal for a team fight unless it's the world's longest team fight. So for SPT though, this is the second time we have seen them go into a Dahaka early, and then once they... It's almost like they are trying to trick their opponents into thinking that that's going to be the solo laner, but then bringing in the Falstad instead as another possible solo laner for them. So we'll see how they want to set up for that lane, for all of the laning setup, because they have many options now with the double global.
Yeah, actually, Falstad, he can solo lane fairly well. He does take quite a bit of Purge Evil, Tyrael level 1 talent smite damage. and he would lose some sustain at level 1 to 3. He would have a rough time, but from level 4 he can start to heal up. And the Haka on that 4-man is also very threatening. There's a number of options that both of these teams have. They can also shake it up entirely and set 3 members top.
We head into Game 1 on Dragonshire between Roll20 Esports and SPT. Winner of this moves on to the top 6 teams. The loser is the second team to be eliminated.
Just in there with that Stormbolt, actually going to be picking up the bonus damage. He's going to be on Muradin, Dainsky on Genji. We've got Cure on Greymane, Buds on Rhaegar, and Goku is going to be on Tyrael, signifying he will indeed be that solo laner.
Yes, and over for SPT. Soap will be playing as Dahaka, Melody C playing Falstad again, Misaka on Arthas, Xin Xiao on Cassia, and ZZH playing Lucio.
North America versus China, Roll20 versus SPT, 1 eliminated and 1 advanced to top 6. This is game number 1 of the Gold Club World Championship, loser bracket round 1.
I'll be watching Melody C on that Falstad. He has had some phenomenal Falstad plays and also some unfortunate Falstad plays in this tournament. We'll see how they want to engage, if they're going to use that Gust at all ever aggressively, or if they decide to just play it safe. Maybe only if Roll20 is trying to siege up against them would he be cautious enough, or so bold enough actually, to move out and Gust team into a structure.
We see Roll20 setting a trap together with Muradin and Genji. And they're turning what looks like a 1v2 into a 3 versus 2. The Haka takes a lot of damage, Burrow available or not. Wouldn't have mattered. I'm assuming it got used before in mid. It's a pretty long cooldown, 16 to 20 seconds or so. And Roll20 gets the first blood.
Yeah, Roll20 is kind of pulling a ballistics, or one of the Korean teams here, setting up the trap at the top, putting their standard solo laner in the bottom lane. Solo versus Jin Xiao. The SPT even put both of their globals in the top, trying to make sure that they could stay safe versus that. But with the good isolation and the kill from Roll20, great synergy from that, they'll take first blood and now can start back up the rotations.
I see that Roll20 is now sending Muradin top, but very flexible in how they view the laning setup. Keep in mind that although Roll20 only has 4 points from the groups, they have had some of the most dominating early to mid game against the very best teams here. The rotations, the way they think about the early to mid game has been really good.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Rhaegar walks into the Howling Blast and SPT gets their first kill.
Premonition from Misaka on that Arthas to make sure that he catches him as he's running back too. That's even a Rhaegar with Wolf Run. So how's that extra movement
If he didn't
speed?
have it, he wouldn't have had time to run into it.
Oh, that's true. Coming back to bite him, as things sometimes do when it comes to Rhaegar.
Nice.
Thank you. Level 4 achieved by both of the teams. And still just a lot of fluid rotations for these teams. SPT trying to make sure that they have a handle on Roll20 because they have this Dahaka, they have Falstad, who once he gets Boomerang is going to have a lot more wave clear. They're the ones who can pull ahead in the laning setup for them. So it's on Roll20 to see if they can catch a break somewhere, but this is going to be troublesome for them if they lose Dainsky.
There's a break, all right. Dainsky gets away with 1% life. Ninja vanishes into the shadows and lives to fight another day. First siege camp was taken by Roll20. They're pushing a little bit along with it, while SPT is actually slow to respond to it, relatively speaking. Small double laser channel, but SPT is dealing with it.
Yeah, it can take Cassia some time to try to deal with those mercenary camps. Fen does 50% damage to non-heroic targets, so it takes her a little while, you can see, to get through that, but Soap is here to help out. SPT really trying to use their globals to the maximum effect they possibly can.
Now that does get harder for a team as you go up against globals as the game goes on. Considering that Roll20 should be taking pretty decent control of the early to mid if they would like to have a good chance against SPT. Later on, against probably from level 11 to 13 onwards, globals become a considerable issue, and you see that teams will generally group up more to the middle and bot, giving up top entirely just because the Dahaka Falstad can fly down, make a 5 versus 4, and give you a fight that you do not want to have. So you need to make sure you're already together as a very tight nucleus, and that means often giving up top lane control in Dragonshire. That means Roll20 needs to do well in the early game in order to have a good chance.
Yeah, they're trying to do that. They have some push with the mercenary camps. They've been very diligent with those mercenary camps. The problem is that they don't have a ton by means of wave clear. So they're having to deal with the SPT push in the bottom lane. You talk about the globals, and I feel like it only gets terrifying for Roll20 at 20 too, because there is the very real fear of things like Apex Predator, for the Epic Mount, too, for Falstad. We haven't seen a lot of Apex Predator for Dahaka. I would guess that SPT would still want to move into Contagion because it's just such a powerful spell once you can get level 20 isolation, but still Epic Mount is enough to make a lot of problems for Roll20 in trying to either get a Dragon Knight or even just stop SPT from getting 1-2.
Yeah, exactly. Roll20's mid towers are out of ammunition or not existing anymore. That means that they need to be present at mid at all times. It's a bit of a handicap for them, and good job by SPT pushing the middle this hard.
And they're going to push that continually in there as Roll20 turns to get aggressive. Misaka pops Icebound Fortitude and the Frozen Tempest to slow things down. Roll20, though, biding time until they can get heroic abilities. Once they get that, the team fight capacity goes through the roof with Sanctification, with Dragon Blade, and Ancestral Healing is going to be a great enabler, too. Justin in trouble. ZZH comes in with the Boop Cleanse, helps Justin get out in danger in the nick of time. Misaka thought about it. He seriously thought about it, but decided they'd done enough damage. SPT still controlling the laning.
It was very rational of him. Merlin was already out of range. It's difficult to let a fish get back into the water like that, but he was definitely already gone. Big one-on-one here by these two teams.
Oh.
Goku versus Melody C.
But it's not a fair fight because Dahaka stalked in.
Nice. It looks like Melody C already used his barrel roll, or he would have certainly given chase. Roll20, they need to create space on the map at some point. I'm looking at that bottom Bruiser camp as their main vessel, their main tool and weapon in order to create that space. A strong bottom push could force SPT to react to it, but it has largely been ignored. We see Roll20 playing very defensively, putting major wave clear characters in the middle lane, waiting for single waves, and I would like to see them put a little bit more pressure on that bottom Bruiser, but it is a hazardous play. So now, with level 9 versus 10, that becomes a bit too risky.
Yeah, because of the globals and the wave clear, Roll20 have been just constantly making sure they're applying tourniquets to whatever lane SPT are attacking. SPT gets heroic abilities first, and I'm wondering now that 10 is here for Roll20, what are they going to do about the solo lane? Yesterday, there was a problem with Ethereal versus Akarazim. Actually, I think it was in the group stage, so not quite yesterday. But wanting to have Tyrael with the team so that he has Sanctification to enable, but then who do you put in that top lane instead? Maybe Greymane.
For now, I think that Roll20 is...
Haymaker.
Haymaker, wow, okay. Who for? It doesn't interrupt sound barrier, by the way. It just displaces it.
That's a dance party for one.
I don't see particular reason except that he has already gone down the damage route. Tyrael goes down here. Goku gets caught by an isolation of the Haka. The level 1 and the level 10 just show that he's playing it a little bit more as a bruiser. He feels so safe from Tyrael keeping him alive.
Yeah, he has that, give him the axe too. Haymaker was used, knocks Soap away so that he can't escape.
Okay, so I feel like Genji would have definitely died if Haymaker didn't come out. So strike number 1 for Haymaker.
Well done from Justing, but the problem now is that SPT, in having control of both of the shrines, force the fight, force Roll20 back again, and pick up the first Dragon Knight of the game. And keep in mind, this is game 1 of a best of 5, but this is an important game for SPT. SPT always wins on Dragonshire in their region. There is just no question about who's going to win when SPT plays on Dragonshire, so much so that it's often banned against them. So in this instance, being able to come out of the gate swinging, get the first victory, and on a map that you know so well, that's really important for SPT here.
Yeah, it could be quite discouraging to lose your best map right to begin with, really. There could even be an argument not to take it right away. But again, it can also give you comfortability and confidence to start with that one. To make sure that you can just focus on that and not on your nerves.
Goku in trouble again. Isolation came out. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide as the double globals bring him down, taking out Tyrael again in the top lane. SPT utilizing these globals so well throughout this entire game. First to push back all the rotations of Roll20, not let Roll20 be the ganking team up in the top with the Genji, and now to get ganks of their own. While the Dragon Knight push is going on, they'll also take a fort here, and SPT climbs ahead.
Yeah, I mean, 1 + 1 = 2, and when you are at that place in the lane against Isolation, the slow on Rhaegar there attempted to be used with the Drag Tongue to get a kill. When you're against double global and you're against Isolation and you stay around when you don't have a Druid's Might, you are gonna get killed in theory if the opponent plays it perfectly, and SPT did. Credit to them. But this is why I said at level 11 to 13 generally, from that point onwards, you will stop seeing that dedicated solo lane by some of the best teams in the world like Fnatic. They will start to quote-unquote death ball more, group up in order to force enemy globals to respond to you, rather than allowing them to gank single stragglers. By applying more strong pressure at the bottom lane, they have to come down, and then you have a win.
Well, the Dragon Blade has been started. This is Roll20's chance. Forces out the sound barrier. Ancestral healing for the momentary retreat of Dansky and Sanctification so he can get right back into the fight. Cassia goes down. A second kill on Arthas, and Roll20 biting back.
Gigantic Sanctification coming out here. The sound barrier was good. It countered much of the Dragon Blade damage, but with the Ancestral healing hitting and Sanctification controlling the mercenary control point, Roll20 gets a double victory. Not just the takedowns that they get, and not just the camp that they get, which seems to be life and death for some people, but it's what they get out of that. Having these two things at the same time, the camps with Siege and having members on the enemy team dead, creates some of the most follow-up value that you can ever have.
Big part of that too, early Cursed Bullet caused some problems for Misaka. He had to use his zombies to try to start healing back from that, and he was the primary person on the point from that too. So started off very well, made ZZH be cautious and wanted to use his sound barrier early on in the fight, and with a great Ancestral healing, which Buds has been doing pretty much all tournament long, and as long as I remember his Rhaegar play, he has he let Dansky get right back into the fight, and that Sanctification, like you said, perfection from Roll20. It gives them so much alleviation of pressure now from SPT2. SPT were controlling the lanes. If Roll20 didn't do something there, they would have been in dire straits. They take out a fort in the bottom, and this helps them out so much.
Arguably, Roll20 has to do that again and again, because the globals doesn't work for them. Goku doing some solo laning this time does get away on time by himself, but it gets dangerous against those rotations. Some of the reason why that fight went so well for Roll20 is because SPT was minus a Mighty Gust. This was attempted to be used on an Isolation kill on Rhaegar. Roll20 comes in with the Stormbolt on Arthas. Cursed Bullet, Haymaker!
The Gust
and the Gust
used
into Arthas, thank you very much!
Right into him, Arthas is gone, sound barrier used, hoping that Roll20 won't get anything further from this, and the Ball Lightning punishing this Death Ball composition of Roll20 with so many melee. SPT stabilize at only the singular loss. They should be able to make rotations enough with their globals. They sent a Haka bottom to at least stop Roll20 from getting a Dragon Knight from this.
Yeah, and at this point Roll20 shouldn't play cat and mouse. They have all 5 members at the top in a 5 versus 4 situation. They know the Haka went bottom. Top fort is available. 5 of them are there. They have almost all the heroics available. I find it difficult to defend the fact that they went bottom lane. They think they can get Dragon Knight out of it, and they might be correct, but very good job. Falstad, Melody C flies down, zones Genji off the point. They've bought enough time. Arthas is back, AFK for 2 seconds. I saw that, reported. And Roll20 will try to capture back the Shrine Point. Just in time!
Wow.
Wow! Isolation misses, but they have saved the DK from being taken. So Roll20 effectively gets no siege value and no Dragon Knight when they had 5 versus 3 top. They could have taken it out in fourth, in my opinion.
Insta-Gust.
Yeah.
Melody C wanted nothing to do with that giant dwarf jumping at him. But that does give an amount of time where Gust is now down for Roll20. Can they capitalize on it the same way that they did before? They are just rotating out, getting a camp in the bottom. This forces back SPT and lets them try to rotate in and make another play of some sort, potentially for the Dragon Knight, potentially trying to see if they can catch people at this camp since it'll be spawning in just a few seconds.
8 seconds left. SPT closing in on it. Muradin yielded. Now setting a trap in the middle lane. Roll20 playing very methodically. They're allowing Siege Camp to push bottom. not showing in vision, waiting until they see the members of SPT, checking out the siege camp here. They're starting it. Instead of setting a trap, SPT is aware.
Yes, this is pretty scary because remember, Dahaka can stalk in, but knowing that, Goku just made the rotation so that there was no way that Roll20 got caught from the globals. Double camp in the bottom, picked up by Roll20. Dahaka starting to push up in the top lane, but backs off when people go into the shadows.
Roll20 steals away a siege camp. It won't do push damage, but you deny it to your opponent. Then they cleared mid. They pretended to walk down for just 2 seconds as vision disappears. So it looks like they're going to go bot. Then suddenly they went top. They tried to get Dahaka with such a vision play, but Dahaka, he did his due diligence. He played it safe and he went back. But that was a cool little move by Roll20.
Yeah, they're trying to do their best to manipulate the globals of SPT as best as they can, but that 20 is getting closer and closer all of the time. SPT back to full in all of their players back on the board. They even get the bottom camp in the time that they knew that Roll20 was rotating out. We'll send Dahaka to the top lane.
Justin wasted Stormbolt. He doesn't have his quest yet. That means he doesn't have auto attacks to CDR and bring his next Stormbolt quicker. So he has to wait for the next engage. Has that big jump in order to try and engage upon someone. The goal here would be to attack once, reset Gust, and have the next fight be able to be more effective. Bolt misses again. That removes much of the threat from Roll20, and you see that Dahaka moves up top again in response to that, pushing more, gaining more experience, and getting back the lead in that department to SPT.
Yeah, now that Roll20 have Holy Ground, there is a bit more way of them being able to engage, but Stormbolt, every time it does miss, and SPT can realize this, know that the threat is not as severe from Roll20, who are getting aggressive here.
Soap continuing to get a little bit of experience value. Falstad in the mid. Roll20 has the death ball because of that threat of reunification for the SPT members. A lot of XP being missed potentially here. Murden opting to go for the aggression rather than soaking the wave. Jumping to the shrine. And a wave clear and a mercenary capture by Roll20 at the same time. This is nice. It will keep Dahaka busy and offer vision for the top lane.
Yeah, they must have been really concerned about the transition up to the shrines and how fast SPT were getting on the bottom. But again, it favors SPT in that they're able to get a camp at the same time as they are on that shrine. They steal away the Giants of Roll20. That top is going to be good for Roll20, definitely. It'll make Dahaka head back up there, but Roll20 has to do the exact same thing, dealing with the Giants. They'll go straight back down to the bottom, and the cat and mouse seesaw game of Dragonshire continues.
Yeah, these are some of the most low death count, high tension moments in Heroes of the Storm. Dragonshire, cat and mouse rigmarole. Both teams reach level 20. Roll20 sets up around Siege Camp. They have powerful zone control tools. Haymaker, Sanctification and Holy Ground. Murden gets the rewind. Dragon Becomes Me, Storm Shield. We have Hunter's Blunderbuss, Holy Arena, SPT. Synesthesia on Lucio. Big fight here at the Siege Camp. Arthurs get blown up.
The wind tunnel is pushing back all of Roll20 with the Sanctification. Nullified a lot of that, at least initially though. So pulling in, Justing with the drag. He is taken out as he wants to Dwarf Toss to freedom. Dansky has to get back. Ancestral Healing is still available for Buds if he'd like to use it. But not wanting to do that, knowing that everybody is A-okay. Everyone made it out, and they had a 1-for-1.
Yeah, we saw that Contagion hitting 3-4 members, I believe, of Roll20. Mighty Gust was largely deflected by a very well-timed Sanctification by Goku. Small little panic here as the double lasers channel, but quick take back by Goku.
It seems like that area of fighting is so good. Like, you would look at Holy Arena being able to guarantee that you have a Sanctification that hits so many people, give them that extra 25% damage, enable the Dragon Blade of Genji, but then it also puts them in a spot where everyone is hit by Wind Tunnel that same way from SPT, and Ball Lightning and Contagion are problematic from that for the fight. It may just come down to who pulls the trigger first on those defensive abilities, right? Who can keep Sanctification or Sound Barrier up as an option until the very end? And having Gust for SPT, they were able to at least make sure that they only lost one, but Roll20 at least traded out by taking out Misaka.
Roll20 now congregating to the bottom lane, controlling the shrine. First bullet.
Double bolt. Dansky went in, takes out one and a second. Wind Tunnel will buy some time for Misaka, but he's not out of here yet. Goku does not catch him with the Holy Ground. Misaka is ever healing up more and more with the Legion of Northrend zombies, but Goku doesn't want to be done with this fight. Gets caught by the Howling Blast. Sanctification used. Stormbolt comes out. No Haymaker. Tunneling Claws from Soap saves him again, but this time Lucio went down. The support of SPT down for 40 more seconds. This might be the chance for Roll20.
Yeah, great job there. Getting a lot of damage on Lucio before there with Hunter's Blunderbuss and Gilnean Cocktail. 30 seconds to bridge for SPT. Can they play the cat and mouse well enough? Soap taking a big risk here. He's all by himself. Yeah,
Kira has to squat and the rest of Roll20 show up, but that does leave Cassia to stop Genji from getting the Dragon Knight. More of SPT here. They have a 3v3.
Dragon Knight attempt by Genji. Cassia's there to poke away with her Lightning Javelin.
Oh, but Tyrael showing up there, which leaves top free, and SPT heads there.
Going for the kill instead. Dragon Blade on the single hero. Chen Xiao gets taken out. Dansky gets away. Great move by Roll20. Recognizing that the continued channel wasn't going to pay off. Dahaka there at that top. And Roll20 get another kill. Chain deaths, I believe they call this.
Yes, the stagger deaths for Roll20. This is how they end the game versus this frustrating double global style composition. As long as SPT is more than willing to meet them in battle, somewhere else they're getting an advantage. Right now they're trying to see if that's in the bottom lane. They push away with the Haymaker, Sound Barrier and Wind Tunnel both used.
Yeah, a bit of an overlap there. Either one would have probably sufficed, but the panic was real as Goku punched away Falstad and went for the rewind Stormbolt.
Falstad's coming top. Isolation's used, but can Goku live through this now? Throws out Holy Ground Smite. He's barely making it out. Has the movement speed. Being chased down though by Melody.
Oh!
The shield and Goku lived through it. I can't believe it.
Righteousness there, keeping him alive. Cooldown came back just in time. Sanctification was on a 1 second cooldown as well, so that was never going to help. Very close there. That single auto attack would have killed him without the shields. And now, smartly Roll20 saves the Dragon Knight, allowing time for Tyrael to jump back in. Tyrael didn't even dare to go for a full Hearthstone and heal. That's how quickly he wanted to come back here. But with the Dragon Knight 50 seconds, this should be a pretty good moment here for Roll20. Keep is in their sights.
21 minutes in for this Dragon Knight. Holy Ground giving Roll20 some zoning to move that Dragon Knight on up. There is so much damage from SPT on this Dragon Knight. They won't get much more, but they should get the keep here. Although with the Wind Tunnel,
Beautiful sanctification.
So good.
Confirming the kill on Cassia thanks to it. Blocking the Wind Tunnel. In comes Dansky with Genji taking down another member. Isolation hits 3 members. Can SPT stop the flow here of Roll20?
Ancestral healing keeps Dansky going and going and going. Now Goku chases down with another. Lucio's gone. Roll20 Esports has killed 3 members of SPT. Only 2 left to try to defend versus this, and it just won't be enough. Roll20 takes out SPT in game 1 of this best of 5.
Yeah, a bit of a struggle there for Goku in the early game, in that laning mismatch into the Haka and Falstad. But boy did he save this game with some excellent sanctifications there, confirming the second kill and guaranteeing the core all in. Keep was in the sides, trade was 1 for 1, almost. They got 1 kill in a 5 versus 4, but suddenly sanked. 1 more kill, taking away a very important damage dealer of Falstad, and that beautiful block on the Mighty Gust as well, which would have bought so much time. Roll20 with the first map. Now 3-0 against SPT in this tournament.
I know that if Dread were here, he would want to point out how amazing Goku played on that Tyrael, because in general, we being North America, we don't have a ton of incredible Tyrael players. It's not like we see a ton of Tyrael play. It's far more common in other regions, especially in regions like Korea and China too. And so to see Goku be able to make plays off of Holy Ground and to have that consistent of sanctifications in that game is awesome to see, both for Goku, whose performance, he's like on his Leoric game, he was getting caught a lot by CE, but to come in and have that performance there, and on a hero that in general is not, like North America is not known for, I hope he's MVP. That's all I have to say.
And then for SPT, if they meet that kind of Tyrael play again, a hero who has gained a lot in popularity, which the lower bracket teams have seen the upper bracket teams bring out a lot, more and more in these matches that we saw yesterday, you would need to come up with a way to deny proper sanctifications, either silence or displacement during that time. Looking at the tools for SPT, some were there. Lucio's Soundwave, Dahaka's Isolation, and of course Falstad's Mighty Gust. So it will be up to them. But it also shows why Haymaker was so cool, because this allowed Roll20 to disrupt the disruption.
Yes, exactly. And the disruption for SPT to have that forces you to either have forces you to either have Lucio in a pretty bad place, because then he is within reach of things like the Haymaker, and then all of a sudden he's thrown to the wolves, or even with Falstad for that too, but for Falstad to be further back, then you're using Gust, and it's hard. You don't want to use that just to make sure that you stop sanctification, because if you miss, then all of a sudden Gust is wasted, and that really is your best chance, your best hope at getting away from this death ball composition of Roll20.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about that Falstad final pick there. It was meant to be used to stop that all-in, recognizing that SPT only has the single support in Lucio. And so the Gust really had to be perfect to reset those fights. It comes down to that, really. Because they could have taken a second support, for instance. And I must say, it wasn't quite there for SPT. If they are